There's no reason in the world that a privately issued currency couldn't be issued and serve maybe even better, because it's totally beyond the temptation of politicians to start meddling with the rules. Yeah. It's beyond the reach of political temptation.
Now, picture a world where you are in control of your money, where you're free to spend any amount, small or large, anywhere in the world, and your identity is safe. Your money cannot be diluted by government creating it out of nothing and then giving it away to banks, special interests, towards wars, or in foreign aid. You can help stop selfish banking interests. You can shape your destiny. And we don't even have to end the current system. We just merely need to bypass it.
The world is in financial disarray. Currencies failing, economies in wild flux, jobs being lost. But what if you could build an entirely new economy, one specifically designed for the digital realm? Well, that is the dream behind Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, for those of you who don't know, is an electronic online currency that was created in 2009. It was made by someone who did it under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto.
Like any economy, you don't want too much too fast, because then the value of your currency drops, or so slow that your economy grounds to a halt. It's designed to be a self-stabilizing economy. Whether it actually is that way, though, well, that is a little bit more complicated.
Because some people have said, hey, Bitcoin is the answer to those problems. Are you a believer?
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place. And, of course, for large transactions, currency can get pretty inconvenient.
And what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a currency on the internet.
I sent 100 euros worth of Bitcoin from here in Tokyo directly to you guys through this camera, through the network, through the TV, right into your home. If I had tried to do that, send you the money with a traditional bank, it would have taken several days and probably cost 30 euros. I just did it right now with Bitcoin instantly, basically for free, and didn't have to ask anybody for permission. I didn't need a bank, I didn't need a government, I didn't need anybody. I just needed myself and you and our smartphones to do it. That's the power of Bitcoin.
Wall Street is fraud, America is fraud, the world is fraud, banks are fraud, central banks are fraud. We live in an era of fraud. It's all based on fraud, and they get a percentage of the fraud. That's the business model. To suggest that there is any moral or ethical aspect to anything that's going on now is to be completely naive about the fact that we live in an era dominated by financial terrorists, jihadis of banking. They're here to kill you and themselves. They believe in an ideology, not the Quran, but Adam Smith, that they completely misread and interpret as something to justify their blowing themselves up. Janet Yellen's a terrorist. Mario Draghi's a terrorist. The Central Bank of Japan is a terrorist. These are the real terrorists.
Bitcoin is fundamentally different because in Bitcoin, you don't owe anyone anything and no one owes you anything. It is not a system based on that. It is a system based on ownership. And no one can censor it, no one can seize it, no one can freeze it.
It's November the 2nd, 2008, just 6 weeks after the Lehman Brothers collapse. And all over the world, there are panicked debates about how to save the banks. Then, on a little visited web forum for cryptographers, a document appears in which a completely new monetary system is proposed. The visionary author calls himself Satoshi Nakamoto.
These were the darkest days of the financial crisis. So that to me suggests a very clever mind that saw an opportunity, the perfect opportunity to introduce a new radical technology and a new radical approach to money and finance at just the right moment when people would be very open to making this big shift that's required to adopt a new currency. So that to me suggests a very clever mind, the perfect opportunity to introduce a new radical technology and a new radical approach to money and finance. The perfect opportunity to introduce a new radical technology and a new radical approach to money and finance at just the right moment,
What's exciting for me is like a global economy. Right now we say we have a global economy, but I can't take $1 and give it to you in the Netherlands and then you know what to do with it, right? You would have to go and change it to your native currency. And when you kind of eliminate that step, and I can just send you one form of payment and you can send me a product in a matter of seconds, that starts to change things from a global perspective.
Why is gasoline so expensive?
Telling us which food brands are ready for the uptick in costs.
The United States has just lost its top-notch AAA credit rating.
18 people have been charged in what may be one of the nation's largest credit card fraud rings.
What some are calling fool's gold, it is the virtual currency called is a kind of holy grail of payments.
We're asking whether or not this currency really has any longevity, let alone legitimacy.
How can I hedge against inflation and other government manipulation? One thing I did was to buy Bitcoin. What are they?
I don't really know that much about Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is a purely online currency with no intrinsic value.
It is digital currency, which you can then use to buy things online.
Bitcoin is
Bitcoin.
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 So that basically summarizes my take on cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, I suppose. Which perhaps is controversial to some people and not at all to others. I guess it just kind of depends on where you are. But I'm really not going to belabor that point. It's kind of... that's just my personal perspective on the whole thing. It's just... and I've had it ever since I first learned about Bitcoin and the Satoshi character, alleged Satoshi character. And when you look at the timing of it and just the whole narrative, it's so textbook that to me it just smells of all the typical Hegelian, Hegelian red flags and everything. But after doing all the research that I put into the Ethereal documentary on the occult roots and connections with Kabbalah that tie back to the pseudoscience of quantum physics and then by extension this new advent of quantum computing, the real interesting question at this point is what happens when we have this inevitable convergence of what seems to be the demonically seeded, the demonically inspired and seeded technology of the cryptocurrencies and the blockchain technology, and when that comes face to face with the quantum computing issue. And there's a lot of people out there who've been talking about this already, and there's kind of a number of different takes on it, and that's what's so interesting is that it's still kind of foggy exactly how this is going to unravel, but I think no matter what the specifics are, it's pretty clear to see that if we already know where it's all going to go and what the ultimate result is going to be in terms of the beast, the one world currency and the beast system and all of that. But it's something that I hope people can, because there are a lot of people that are kind of saying, yeah, we know that cryptocurrencies eventually is probably the most likely candidate for that one world digital currency. But in the meantime, it's potentially trying to fight the system, and for me, which is why it's one of the reasons why it's most suspicious, is because it's exactly what it's purporting to do, is provide a workaround, against the whole central banking system. Which, if you really step back and think about it, what 2008 did was really expose a whole lot more people to the errors of the banking system. It was it was really, I think most of us understand that was a controlled event, just like everything else. And if you look at it from a disclosure kind of perspective, it doesn't make any sense to do that and expose yourself unless you're trying to expose yourself. Unless you're trying to expose the corruption of Wall Street and demonize the bankers and the banking, the elites, which honestly I think is what they're all trying to do, and exposing the whole satanic hierarchy, quote unquote. Whereas Bitcoin Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies sort of embody this whole, totally equitable, free, unrestrained. It's truly global in the sense that it bypasses. They can't regulate it. They can only regulate it, at the outsides, at the nexus points with other currencies or with other things. But internally, they can't control it unless they control the whole internet and all that. So, most of you already know all about Bitcoin. But again, coming back to quantum computing, I think in a lot of ways, if you think about it for a little bit, you can see how that could very well be the arena by which the quote-unquote built-in backdoor could really come into play, which is what they claim does not exist or is impossible with blockchain technology and with cryptocurrencies. The whole thing that they're called cryptocurrencies because it's an entirely different model of cryptography, it's an entirely different system, and yet there are people out there that are claiming that quantum computing could potentially be the one technology that could crack the cryptocurrencies and hack them. But then there's other people that will argue that it would be too cost prohibitive to try and do that because quantum computing, it requires so much money just to use it on a large scale. In order to hack all the cryptocurrencies, it would just be astronomical. I mean, so there's this whole debate going on, but with that, some of the people say the only way to prevent the quantum computing from posing a serious threat to the cryptocurrencies would be to use quantum computing itself as the answer to that as well. So there's all this talk now of the merging, and like I said, it'll be interesting to see where that all goes in the next few years. Definitely be keeping an eye on all this, but it's interesting too to consider the possibility that, speaking of sort of built-in backdoors and create the problem, provide the solution, one of the sort of the built-in problems with cryptocurrencies is, of course, the whole, the coin mining aspect, and how, if you followed Bitcoin at all, how the mining thing is something that is just progressively costly in terms of both, just the electricity required and the processing power required. The more people that are using the currency, the more intensive the mining process becomes, right? So it's kind of so if there's one aspect of the cryptocurrencies that really steers people away from accessibility, it is that element, which, who knows, at some point perhaps quantum computing will be put forth as sort of the the convenient or obvious solution to the whole mining challenges, right? Because if quantum computing can allegedly outperform classical computing to such a vast degree, I mean, it would, at some point it might be considered the more beneficial approach in terms of cost and everything. And who knows at what point they're going to make quantum computing available in some sort of cloud, some sort of cloud capacity, and who knows? I think we're really at the beginning stages of seeing how, these different technological, advances that just both of which seemingly kind of, just came out of nowhere right around the same time, conveniently enough. And so you have one that kind of speaks to the software side in terms of how the blockchain technology is something that is being proposed not just as a new approach to currencies and finance, but as a way of just basically, all sorts of computing, just basically creating a whole new internet using blockchain technology. And so that would be more of the software side, whereas the quantum computing is actually kind of both software and hardware. And there's different approaches that people are trying to kind of figure out quantum computing supposedly. Coming from the place that I do, you're more or less coming at it with the assumption that the technology already exists or is known, and it's all about rolling it out, and it's all about soft disclosure and getting the public to, that's all we're really seeing now is, the process of getting people to embrace it and transfer over. And so all these things are just going to increasingly kind of blend into, the beast system one way or another. And I think that's pretty undeniable at this point. So like I've said, I've been looking into this whole discussion on the synthesizing of these two technologies, of the quantum computing and the blockchain technology. So if you guys come across any information that you think would be significant in that regard, feel free to, send it my way and send me a link or two. Thanks a lot.